Hi Tina, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Your campaign slogan is "It's time." What does that mean?
It means that it's time for a renewal of our party. The Premier has talked about that quite a bit, and it speaks to a couple of things. It speaks to it's time for a fresh kind of leadership. I'm certainly not going to pretend to be like the Premier. I think that's impossible. But I do think I'm a different kind of leader, and I think I have some different kinds of policies in mind. And I think it's time for us to take a fresh look at things in our party. We've always been a mix of both Liberals and Conservatives. That's our roots. And I think we need to get back to some of those social value things. And I certainly think we felt that in the last budget as an example.
How are you different than Brad Wall?
Well, obviously I'm female, but I don't want that to be too much a part of this campaign. I'm different in the sense that I'm an urban professional woman, obviously. I'm a mom. He was a dad, but I am a mom of 2 teenage kids. I don't have a stay-at-home partner. I have someone in a very busy law practice, and I've been an urbanite for most of my life. I'm very willing to learn about rural issues and been traveling around the province to make sure that I have a good sense of those issues. But I think I have a pretty good sense of some of the issues that our cities are dealing with, particularly on the social side. As an undergraduate, I worked at the food bank, for example. I have an experience in the post-secondary environment. And so I just bring a different kind of range of experiences than the Premier has. And both are valuable and important. They're just different.
In a time when we don't see a lot of women getting into politics, it's still predominantly men. Why don't you want being a woman to be a part of this campaign?
Because I think it's obvious that I'm a woman. And what I want to be known for and appreciated for is the fact that I'm bringing new policy discussions into the race. I think I'm running a very strong campaign. I think I want those things to be the things that people think about, not whether or not I'm wearing high heels and a dress versus not. I hope other women are looking at me and seeing the possibilities, but I want to be judged on my merits as a person. I want to be judged as a competent, professional, formidable candidate in this race, and that's how I'd like to be treated, just as my male colleagues are.
When you talk about new policy, what would you pick out as priority one if you're elected as the leader of the province?
It's difficult to pick just one thing because I think there are a number of things that we need to look at. And so I would suggest that one of our biggest challenges right now as a party is that we do have challenges in our urban seats. So in Regina, in Saskatoon, and I think we will have some struggles in Moose Jaw as well. And the issues in urban Saskatchewan are different than the issues in rural Saskatchewan. Although there is some crossover and there's certainly some concerns about rural crime, in urban environments there are more concerns about the softer social issues. And so there I would say that, I've offered housing first, a commitment to housing first as one of the things that I'd like to see. I've offered a way for us to do that. We have some housing stock already in the Sask Housing Corporation that we can use for those things. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about, and I think those are a priority. Our municipalities, our urban municipalities in particular, need to also hear that from us.
How do you then balance the needs of rural Saskatchewan and urban Saskatchewan, which can be quite different, and the party has its own set of values? So how do you mold that and try and reconcile those differences?
Well, first of all, we are an agriculturally based party. That's our base. That's the base of our party. That is not going to go away. It's also the basis of our economy, right? And so those are always going to be very, very important parts of the Saskatchewan Party. Our rural members are a very, very formidable part of our caucus. I think, though, what needs to be balanced is that we need to also look at some of the urban issues. And I think perhaps that we haven't paid enough attention to some of those things. And so when we're talking about education as one example, which has become a very dominant issue in this campaign, a lot of our urban communities are very concerned about education in particular. It's not to say that there aren't challenges in rural Saskatchewan, but certainly the mobilization around that has been largely in urban centers. And so I think the way to balance that is I think you need a leadership that understands that. I think that's very important. We haven't really had that in the past. And I think that drives everything else. And so having a strong rural base is part of our caucus and certainly part of our cabinet will bring the balance, and then the leadership that understands the urban issues those two things I think will meet very nicely.
Do you consider yourself to be an underdog in this race?
Yes, but I think that might be an advantage. We're obviously under-resourced compared to the other campaigns. When we think about, when we look at the public disclosures, obviously people can see that my campaign is quite lesser funded than some of the others. To be quite frank with you, I'm personally very invested, financially invested in this campaign. That's open and transparent. So but I think when you start when I started in this, I had some very specific goals in mind. I wanted to make sure we expanded the policy conversations in our party. I wanted to make sure that we try to keep and grow our urban seats and our urban presence. And I wanted to sort of bring us back, I think, to our roots as a party. And today I can tell you that, I've performed well in the debates. We are still putting a lot of good policy out there. We're still running a strong social media. And I'm doing it with all brand new people who've never been part of the political process before, and selling memberships to people who have never been part of the political process before. I think that's all valuable if I think about the long-term nature of the party. So my goal has been the political growth of the party. That has meant a certain amount of disadvantages with respect to fundraising and the army around me and all of those other things. But I think they are value added over the long term for the party.
And what's your goal personally then, aside from growing the party? But what do you see your long-term plan if you weren't elected?
If I'm not elected as Premier of Saskatchewan, I would hope that that whoever is the successful leader would mine some of the best ideas. And I would hope that they, not just from me, but I think I've heard really good ideas from all of the candidates. And I would hope that that leader would, take some of those and use them in presenting a vision going forward. I think I can say for most of the candidates that we are on the same page about the best interests of the party over the long term. And so I would hope to be engaged in that sense, to say, Tina, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about those kinds of things? I hope I've demonstrated that I'm a good policy mind and that I'm good at organizing grassroots. The most important, I think, skills in these things are political skills and policy skills, and I do have those.
Thanks for your time today, Tina.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.